The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty town of Silver Ridge, Montana Territory. And Catherine Morrison knew that stepping off meant leaving behind every shred of the life she had carefully built in Boston. A life that had crumbled to ash the moment Malcolm Thornton decided her refusal of his marriage proposal was an insult worthy of destroying her completely. She gathered her carpet bag and the small trunk that contained everything she now owned, her hands trembling despite her determination to appear composed. The driver, a grizzled man with kind eyes, helped her down onto the wooden boardwalk, and Catherine found herself standing in the middle of a town that looked nothing like the orderly brick streets of Boston. Silver Ridge was all rough timber and sun-bleached wood, with mountains rising in the distance like ancient guardians watching over this wild place. It was late September 1876, and the air carried a crispness that promised winter would come early to this territory. Catherine smoothed down her traveling dress, aware that it marked her as someone from back east, someone who did not belong here. She had written ahead to secure a position as a schoolteacher, presenting herself as a widow seeking a fresh start. The lie had tasted bitter on her tongue when she penned the letter, but it was easier than explaining the truth, that she was a ruined woman fleeing the vicious gossip that had made it impossible to show her face in polite society. Malcolm Thornton had been persistent in his courtship, but Catherine had seen the cruelty in his eyes, the way he spoke to servants, the possessiveness that masqueraded as devotion. When she finally refused him, he had smiled coldly and told her she would regret choosing pride over security. Within a week, rumors began circulating through Boston's social circles, whispered insinuations about Catherine's virtue, about secret liaisons and compromised morals. None of it was true, but truth mattered little when Malcolm's family had money and influence. Her teaching position at the prestigious Girls' Academy was terminated. Former friends crossed the street to avoid speaking to her. Her own family, ashamed and unwilling to weather the scandal, had suggested she go away for a while, until things quieted down. Catherine knew things would never quiet down. Malcolm had made certain of that. So she had taken what little money she had saved, purchased a ticket west, and decided that if her old life was truly over, she would find a new one in a place where no one knew her name or cared about Boston gossip. The town stretched before her, a single main street flanked by various establishments. She could see a general store, a saloon with swinging doors, a building marked as the assayer's office, and further down, a small white church with a modest steeple. Horses were tethered at hitching posts, and men in wide-brimmed hats moved about their business with purposeful strides. A few women walked along the boardwalk, their dresses simpler and more practical than Catherine's elaborate traveling costume. She needed to find the mayor's office. Her letter had been addressed to Mayor Cornelius Webb, who had responded with cautious optimism about her teaching credentials. The previous teacher had left rather suddenly, he explained, and the children of Silver Ridge needed proper education. Catherine had seized the opportunity with both hands, seeing it as the lifeline it was. She spotted a man leaning against a post outside the general store, watching her with open curiosity. Gathering her courage, Catherine approached him, keeping her chin high despite her exhaustion. The journey had taken 3 weeks, and every mile had felt like both an escape and a banishment. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her Boston accent sounding startlingly formal in this rough setting. "Could you direct me to Mayor Webb's office?" The man pushed back his hat, revealing weathered features and assessing blue eyes. He was perhaps in his early 30s, with the lean build of someone who worked hard for his living. His clothes were dusty from the trail, and he wore a gun belt with an ease that suggested familiarity. "You would be the new schoolteacher then," he said, and it was not quite a question. "I am Catherine Morrison," she confirmed, offering neither her hand nor further explanation. "Ryder Callahan," he said, tipping his hat politely. "Mayor's office is just down there next to the bank." But Mayor Webb rode out to the Patterson Ranch this morning, Some dispute about water rights. He will not be back until tomorrow at the earliest. Catherine's heart sank. She had nowhere to stay and her funds were desperately limited. The thought of paying for a hotel room filled her with anxiety. "I see," she managed, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. "Is there a boarding house in town? Mrs. Henderson runs a respectable place on the East End," Ryder said, gesturing down the street. "Clean rooms, decent meals, she will see you right." He paused, studying her more closely. "Long journey from back east." "Very long," Catherine said quietly, not wanting to elaborate. She could feel his curiosity, but there was no judgment in his gaze, only a frank assessment that she found less invasive than the cruel scrutiny she had endured in Boston. "Welcome to Silver Ridge, then," Ryder said. "It is not Boston or New York, but folks here are decent mostly and we mind our own business. You will find that suits just fine, I expect." There was something in the way he said it, a knowing quality that made Catherine wonder if her desperation showed more clearly than she hoped. She nodded her thanks and began gathering her bags, struggling slightly with the weight of the trunk. Ryder moved without being asked, lifting the trunk as though it weighed nothing. "I will carry this down to Henderson's for you," he said. "Not fitting to let a lady wrestle her luggage through the street." "That is very kind," Catherine said, surprised by the gesture. In Boston, such help would have come with expectations or been performed by hired servants. Here, Ryder simply fell into step beside her, carrying her trunk with easy strength. As they walked, Catherine took in more details of Silver Ridge. The town was smaller than she had imagined, probably no more than 300 or 400 people. But it had a sense of permanence to it, with established businesses and homes that suggested people were building lives here, not just passing through. Children played in the spaces between buildings, their laughter carrying on the clear air. A dog trotted past, tail wagging, clearly well-fed and belonging to someone. "How long have you lived here?" Catherine asked, making conversation to fill the silence. "About 5 years now," Ryder replied. "Came up from Texas originally. Worked cattle drives until I decided I wanted to stay put for a while. Bought some land north of town, running a small ranch. Nothing fancy, but it is mine." There was pride in his voice, the kind of pride that came from building something with your own hands. Catherine found herself envious of that, of the freedom to simply decide to start over and make it happen. Her own fresh start felt more like exile, forced upon her by circumstances she could not control. They reached the boarding house, a 2-story building that looked well-maintained, with curtains in the windows and a small garden out front where late-season vegetables still grew. Ryder carried the trunk up onto the porch and knocked firmly on the door. After a moment, it opened to reveal a woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ryder Callahan, what brings you to my door?" she asked, then noticed Catherine standing behind him. Her expression shifted to one of interest. "And who might this be?" "Mrs. Henderson, this is Catherine Morrison, the new schoolteacher," Ryder said. "She just arrived on the stage and the mayor is out of town until tomorrow. She needs a room for the night at least, Mrs." Henderson's sharp gaze swept over Catherine, taking in the quality of her dress, the exhaustion in her eyes, and something else that Catherine could not identify. Come in," she said, stepping back to allow them entry. "Any woman brave enough to come teach our wild children deserves a comfortable bed and a hot meal. Ryder, bring that trunk up to the blue room, second door on the right." The interior of the boarding house was clean and simply furnished, with doilies on the tables and samplers on the walls. It smelled of bread, baking, and soap, comforting domestic scents that eased some of the tension from Catherine's shoulders. Mrs. Henderson led her up a narrow staircase to a small but neat room with a bed covered in a colorful quilt, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the street. "The rate is 50 cents a night, including breakfast and supper," Mrs. Henderson said, "or $3 for the week if you plan to stay longer. I do not abide drinking, smoking, or entertaining gentlemen in the rooms, but I expect a schoolteacher knows how to conduct herself properly." "Of course," Catherine said, setting down her carpet bag. "I appreciate your hospitality, Mrs. Henderson. I expect I will need the room for at least a few days until I can make more permanent arrangements." Ryder set the trunk down at the foot of the bed and tipped his hat to both women. "I will leave you to get settled," he said. "If you need anything, the general store can usually find me or someone who knows where I am. Good luck with the teaching, Miss Morrison." "Thank you, Mr. Callahan," Catherine said, genuinely grateful for his help. "You have been very kind." After he left, Mrs. Henderson lingered in the doorway, her expression thoughtful. "Ryder Callahan is one of the good ones," she said. "Hard worker, honest, keeps his word. If he offers help, you can count on it." She paused, then added more gently, "Silver Ridge is a good place for fresh starts, Miss Morrison. Whatever happened back east, it does not have to follow you here unless you let it." The words were so unexpected and so perceptive that Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back firmly, unwilling to break down in front of this stranger, no matter how kind. "Thank you," she managed. "I will keep that in mind." Mrs. Henderson nodded and withdrew, closing the door softly behind her. Alone finally, Catherine sank onto the bed and allowed herself a moment of weakness. Her hands shook as she unpinned her hat and set it aside. She had made it. She was here, hundreds of miles from Boston, in a place where Malcolm Thornton's poison could not reach. The question now was whether she could truly build a new life, or if the shame and anger would follow her like shadows, no matter how far she ran. She rose and went to the washstand, pouring water from the pitcher into the basin. The water was cold but clean, and she washed her face and hands, scrubbing away the dust of travel. Looking at herself in the small mirror above the washstand, she saw a woman of 24 who looked older than her years, exhaustion and worry etched into her features. Her dark hair was coming loose from its pins, and her brown eyes held a wariness that had not been there 6 months ago. "You are Catherine Morrison," she told her reflection firmly. "You are a qualified teacher. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You are going to make this work." The words felt like armor, a shield against the doubts that threatened to overwhelm her. She finished tidying herself, changed into a simpler dress, and went downstairs to see if she could make herself useful. Mrs. Henderson was in the kitchen, and the smell of stewing meat and vegetables made Catherine's stomach growl with hunger. She had eaten little during the final leg of her journey, too anxious and uncertain to have much appetite. "Can I help with anything?" Catherine offered from the doorway. Mrs. Henderson looked up from the pot she was stirring and smiled. "Can you peel potatoes?" "I can," Catherine said, grateful for something practical to do with her hands. She had been raised in a household with servants, but her mother had insisted she learn basic domestic skills, saying a lady should understand how a household ran even if she did not do the work herself. Catherine had never imagined those lessons would become survival skills. They worked in companionable silence for a while, and Catherine found the rhythmic task of peeling potatoes oddly soothing. Mrs. Henderson moved about the kitchen with practiced efficiency, and Catherine could tell this was a woman who had spent a lifetime feeding people and making them comfortable. "How many children are in the school?" Catherine asked after a while. "About 20, give or take," Mrs. Henderson replied. "Ages ranging from 6 to 14, all in one room. The older boys can be a handful, especially during planting and harvest when they would rather be helping their families. But they are good children, just energetic and not used to sitting still for long." Catherine nodded, mentally preparing herself. She had taught at the Girls' Academy in Boston, where discipline was strict and the students were expected to be quiet and obedient. Teaching in a one-room schoolhouse with children of all ages would be different, but she was determined to do well. This position was her chance to prove herself, to build a life based on her own merits rather than her family's social standing. "The previous teacher," Catherine ventured carefully. "Why did she leave?" Mrs. Henderson's lips pressed together in a thin line. "She was a flighty young thing from St. Louis who thought teaching would be romantic. Reality did not match her expectations, and she ran off with a traveling salesman after 3 months. Left the children without proper instruction all summer. Catherine felt a flash of indignation on behalf of those children. "That is unconscionable," she said firmly. "Education is not a romantic notion, it is a responsibility." "I am glad to hear you say that, Mrs. Henderson said, her approval evident. "These children deserve better. Their parents work hard to support a school and pay a teacher's salary. They want their children to have opportunities they might not have had themselves." The weight of that responsibility settled on Catherine's shoulders, but it felt good, purposeful. This was something real, something that mattered beyond the shallow concerns of Boston society. These children did not care about her reputation or whether she had refused the right man's proposal. They just needed someone to teach them their letters and numbers, to open doors to possibilities beyond this small town. Supper that evening was served in the dining room where Catherine met the other boarders. There was Mr. Jessup, a retired prospector who spent his days reminiscing about past strikes and complaining about his rheumatism. There was also Miss Alice Pritchard, a seamstress who had come to Silver Ridge 2 years ago and built up a respectable business making and mending clothes. Alice was perhaps 30 with kind eyes and an easy smile. "I am so pleased to meet you," Alice said warmly as they took their seats. "The town has been eager for a new teacher. My young niece Emma will be in your class. She is 8 and quite bright, though rather shy." "I look forward to meeting her," Catherine said, feeling some of her anxiety ease. Alice seemed genuinely friendly, without the false sweetness that had characterized so many of the women in Boston's social circles. The food was simple but plentiful, and Catherine ate with better appetite than she had had in weeks. The conversation flowed easily, with Mr. Jessup telling rambling stories about the early days of the territory and Alice asking polite questions about Catherine's journey. No one pried into her past or asked uncomfortable questions, and Catherine felt herself beginning to relax slightly. After supper, she excused herself and returned to her room, suddenly overwhelmingly tired. She changed into her nightgown, took down her hair and brushed it out, the familiar ritual comforting in this strange new place. The bed was comfortable, and through the open window she could hear the sounds of the town settling for the night. A piano played somewhere, probably from the saloon, and voices drifted on the evening air, laughter and conversation that spoke of community. Catherine lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, and thought about the man who had helped her that afternoon. Ryder Callahan had been courteous and kind, asking no questions and making no assumptions. His comment about Silver Ridge being a place where people minded their own business had felt like a promise, an assurance that her past need not define her future. She hoped desperately that it was true. Sleep came eventually, and for the first time in months, Catherine did not dream of Malcolm Thornton's cold smile or the whispers that had followed her through Boston's streets. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up from downstairs. For a moment she was disoriented, not remembering where she was. Then memory returned, and with it, a cautious sense of hope. This was her first full day in Silver Ridge, the beginning of her new life. Catherine washed and dressed carefully, choosing a practical gray dress with a white collar that looked appropriately teacher-like. She pinned her hair up neatly and went downstairs to find Mrs. Henderson setting out breakfast in the dining room. Alice was already at the table and she greeted Catherine with a bright smile. "Did you sleep well?" Alice asked. "Better than I have in weeks," Catherine admitted, taking her seat. "The quiet is remarkable," Alice laughed. "Wait until Saturday night when the Cowboys come into town. It gets a bit livelier then. But yes, generally Silver Ridge is peaceful. We have our share of excitement, but nothing like the big cities I imagine." Catherine thought of Boston, of the constant social obligations and the exhausting effort of maintaining appearances, and felt nothing but relief at the idea of peaceful simplicity. "I think peaceful suits me just fine," she said. After breakfast, Catherine gathered her courage and walked to the mayor's office, hoping he had returned as expected. The morning was cool and clear, and the town looked different in daylight, less intimidating and more welcoming. She passed the general store and saw a woman hanging up a sign advertising fresh eggs. A group of men stood outside the assayer's office, talking animatedly about a recent strike in the hills. Everything felt alive and purposeful. The mayor's office was indeed open, and Catherine found a portly man with impressive whiskers seated behind a desk covered in papers. He looked up as she entered and rose with evident pleasure. "Miss Morrison, I presume? Welcome, welcome. I received word you had arrived yesterday." "I apologize for not being here to greet you properly, Mayor Webb," Catherine said, shaking his offered hand. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I am eager to begin teaching." "Excellent, excellent," Mayor Webb said, gesturing for her to sit. "Let me explain the particulars. The schoolhouse is on the north edge of town, a good solid building with a stove for winter and plenty of windows for light. You will have about 20 students, as I mentioned in my letter. The salary is $40 a month, paid on the first of each month. The town provides the schoolhouse and basic supplies, but if you need anything specific, you will need to submit a request to the town council." $40 a month was more than Catherine had expected, enough to cover her room and board with a little left over for necessities. She nodded, relief washing through her. "That sounds very fair, thank you. The position also comes with living quarters attached to the schoolhouse," Mayor Webb continued. "Just a small room with basic furnishings but private and convenient. The previous teacher preferred to board with Mrs. Henderson, but the option is yours." Catherine considered this. Having her own space, however small, appealed to her sense of independence. But she also appreciated the company and security of the boarding house, at least until she knew the town better. "Perhaps I will start at Mrs. Henderson's and consider the schoolhouse quarters later," she said diplomatically. "Very wise," Mayor Webb agreed. "Now I must ask a somewhat delicate question, and I hope you will forgive me. Your letter mentioned you were recently widowed. I want to assure you that Silver Ridge is a safe and respectable town. We have a marshal who keeps order, and the community looks after its own. A woman alone need not fear for her safety or reputation here." Catherine had known this moment would come, the necessity of maintaining her fiction. The lie stuck in her throat, but she forced it out. "I appreciate your concern, Mayor Webb. My husband passed away from fever earlier this year. I needed a fresh start, somewhere far from painful memories." It was not entirely untrue. Her old life had died, murdered by gossip and malice. She was indeed trying to escape painful memories. Mayor Webb nodded sympathetically, his expression kind. "I understand completely. Many people come west for fresh starts. You will find folks here are more interested in who you are now than who you were before. We judge by actions, not pedigree." Those words, so similar to what Mrs. Henderson and Ryder had implied, made Catherine's throat tight with emotion. This was what she had been searching for, a place where she could be valued for herself. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means more than you know." "Now then," Mayor Webb said briskly, returning to business. "School begins Monday next. That gives you a week to settle in and prepare. I will take you to the schoolhouse now if you like, let you see what you will be working with." "I would appreciate that very much," Catherine said, standing. They walked together through the town, and Mayor Webb pointed out various landmarks and introduced Catherine to people they passed. Everyone seemed friendly and curious, welcoming her with genuine warmth. Catherine began to understand that in a small town like this, a new schoolteacher was significant news, and people were invested in her success. The schoolhouse stood at the north edge of town, a simple wooden building painted white with a small bell tower. Inside was a single large room with desks of various sizes arranged in rows, a larger teacher's desk at the front, and a wood stove in the corner for heat. Slates and chalk were stacked on a shelf, along with a few worn textbooks. A map of the United States hung on one wall, and a blackboard took up most of the front wall behind the teacher's desk. It was basic but functional, and Catherine felt a surge of purpose looking at those empty desks. Soon they would be filled with children eager to learn, children whose futures she could help shape. The responsibility was daunting but also thrilling. "The living quarters are through here," Mayor Webb said, opening a door at the back of the room. Catherine followed and found a small room indeed, barely large enough for the narrow bed, washstand, and trunk that furnished it. A tiny window let in light, and there was a hook on the wall for hanging clothes. It was spare but clean, and Catherine could see how it would suit a teacher who wanted to be close to their work. "It is perfect," she said, and meant it. This was hers, earned by her own qualifications and effort, not granted by family connections or social standing. The simplicity of it appealed to her after the ornate stuffiness of Boston. "I am glad you think so," Mayor Webb said, beaming. "Now, I will leave you to explore and settle in. If you have any questions, my office is always open. And I should mention, there will be a town social next Saturday evening. Nothing fancy, just folks gathering for music and dancing. It would be a good opportunity for you to meet the families of your students." Catherine hesitated. The thought of a social gathering brought back uncomfortable memories of Boston parties where whispers followed her everywhere. But she knew she needed to integrate into the community, and avoiding social events would only isolate her. "I will try to attend," she said carefully. "Thank you for letting me know." After Mayor Webb left, Catherine spent time in the schoolhouse, taking inventory of supplies and planning how she would organize her lessons. She found a few readers, some arithmetic primers, and a well-worn geography book. She would need to assess the students' skill levels and plan accordingly, but she had experience adapting lessons to different abilities. Lost in thought, she did not hear the door open until a voice said, "Settling in." Catherine turned to find Ryder Callahan standing in the doorway, his hat in his hands. Sunlight behind him outlined his lean frame, and she noticed details she had missed yesterday, the way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar, the laugh lines at the corners of his eyes, the quiet confidence in his posture. "Mr. Callahan," she said, surprised but pleased to see him. "Yes, I am beginning to get organized. The schoolhouse is lovely." "It serves well enough," Ryder agreed, stepping inside. "I have a nephew who will be in your class, my sister Mary's boy. His name is Daniel and he is 10 years old. Bright kid but easily distracted. Mary wanted me to come introduce myself, make sure you know the family is supportive of your work." "That is very thoughtful," Catherine said, touched by the consideration. "I look forward to meeting Daniel and your sister." Ryder nodded, then seemed to hesitate as though debating whether to speak further. Finally, he said, "I hope you do not mind my saying this, but you seem like someone running from something. I recognize the look because I have worn it myself. Whatever brought you here, whatever you are leaving behind, it does not have to define what comes next. Out here, we write our own stories." Catherine stared at him, shocked by his directness and the accuracy of his observation. She should have been offended or at least defensive, but instead she felt an unexpected relief. Here was someone who understood, who was not going to judge her for her past. "My reputation was ruined by gossip back east," she heard herself say, the truth spilling out before she could stop it. "A man I refused decided to destroy me socially because I would not marry him. Every lie you can imagine was spread about me. I lost my position, my friends, my place in society, so I came here hoping to start over." She expected shock or disapproval, but Ryder just nodded slowly, his expression serious. "That is a hard thing," he said quietly. "Cruel and unfair. But like I said, out here we write our own stories. What happened back east does not matter in Silver Ridge unless you let it. You are the schoolteacher, a woman with education and courage enough to start fresh. That is who you are here." The simple acceptance in his words broke something loose inside Catherine, some tight knot of fear and shame she had been carrying. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You do not know how much I needed to hear that. "I think I do," Ryder said gently. "I came west running from my own mistakes and regrets. Everyone here has a past. What matters is what you do with your future." He put his hat back on and tipped it respectfully. "I should let you get back to work, but if you need anything, Miss Morrison, anything at all, you can count on me. I mean that." "Thank you, Mr. Callahan," Catherine said, her voice steadier now. "I will remember that." After he left, Catherine sat at her desk and allowed herself a few tears, not of sadness but of relief and cautious hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could truly start over here. Maybe she could be more than the victim of Malcolm Thornton's vindictiveness. Maybe she could be simply Catherine Morrison, schoolteacher, valued for her work and her character rather than judged for rumors and lies. The week passed quickly as Catherine prepared for her first day of teaching. She spent hours at the schoolhouse, organizing materials and planning lessons. She met some of the parents, who came by to introduce themselves and express their hopes for their children's education. Everyone was warm and welcoming, and Catherine began to feel the first real sense of belonging she had experienced since the scandal broke in Boston. She saw Ryder several times, always at a distance. He would tip his hat politely if their eyes met, but he did not seek her out or impose on her time. Catherine found herself thinking about him more than she should, replaying their conversations, remembering the kindness in his eyes and the understanding in his voice. He had seen through her carefully constructed facade and offered acceptance rather than judgment. It was a gift she had not expected. Saturday evening arrived, and Catherine dressed carefully for the town social. She chose a simple blue dress that was pretty without being ostentatious, pinned her hair in a neat style, and walked to the town hall where the event was being held. Music drifted out through the open doors, fiddle and guitar playing a lively tune that made her feet want to move. Inside, the hall was crowded with people of all ages. Children ran and played while adults talked and laughed in groups. A table along one wall held food contributions, an array of pies, cakes, and savory dishes. The musicians sat in a corner, playing enthusiastically if not always perfectly. It was nothing like the elaborate balls Catherine had attended in Boston, but it felt more genuine, more joyful. "Miss Morrison," Alice Pritchard appeared at her elbow, smiling warmly. "I am so glad you came. Come, let me introduce you to more people." The next hour passed in a blur of names and faces. Catherine met ranchers and shopkeepers, miners and farmers, their wives and children. Everyone seemed eager to welcome her, and several parents pointed out which children would be her students. Catherine tried to remember all the names, knowing it would be important to connect faces to families. She was talking with Mrs. Patterson, a rancher's wife with 4 children, when she felt someone's gaze on her. She turned and saw Ryder standing across the room, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. He was cleaned up for the social, wearing a pressed shirt and a string tie, his hair neatly combed. He looked handsome and somehow more approachable than he had in his dusty work clothes. Their eyes met, and Ryder smiled, a slow, warm smile that made Catherine's heart skip unexpectedly. He began making his way through the crowd toward her, and Catherine found herself nervous in a way that had nothing to do with anxiety and everything to do with anticipation. "Miss Morrison," he said when he reached her, "you look lovely this evening." "Thank you, Mr. Callahan," Catherine replied, very aware that Mrs. Patterson was watching them with interest. "Are you enjoying the social more now?" Ryder said easily. "I wonder if you might honor me with a dance." Catherine hesitated. She had not danced since the scandal, had not wanted to put herself in a position where she might be rejected or snubbed. But this was not Boston, and Ryder was not asking out of obligation or pity. He was asking because he wanted to dance with her. "I would like that," she said softly. He offered his arm and she took it, letting him lead her to the cleared space where other couples were dancing. The musicians struck up a waltz, and Ryder swept her into the dance with surprising grace. He was a good dancer, confident and smooth, and Catherine found herself relaxing into the rhythm, following his lead. "You dance well," she said, looking up at him. My mother insisted all her children learn, Ryder said, amusement in his voice. She said even cowboys should have some refinement. I fought it at the time, but I am grateful now. Where is your family? Catherine asked, curious about this man who had shown her such kindness. Still in Texas, mostly, Ryder said. My parents have a ranch there. My sister Mary is here with me. She married a rancher named Tom Brennan, and they have 3 children. I came up to Montana with them, looking for cheaper land and new opportunities. Do you miss Texas? Catherine asked. Sometimes, Ryder admitted, but I like it here. The country is beautiful and there is room to grow to build something that lasts. He paused, then added quietly, room to be who you want to be, not who people expect you to be. Catherine understood the deeper meaning behind his words. Yes, she said softly. That is what I am hoping for too. They danced in silence for a moment, and Catherine was acutely aware of his hand on her waist, the warmth of his palm through the fabric of her dress. She caught the scent of soap and leather, simple and clean. Being this close to him made her pulse quicken in a way that was both alarming and exhilarating. Thank you for what you said at the schoolhouse, Catherine said finally, about writing our own stories. I have been thinking about those words a lot. I meant them, Ryder said, his blue eyes serious. Your past does not define you, Catherine. May I call you Catherine? Miss Morrison seems too formal for friends. Friends, Catherine repeated, testing the word. I would like that. And yes, please call me Catherine. May I call you Ryder? I would prefer it, Ryder said, and his smile was warm and genuine. The dance ended, but before Ryder could ask for another, a young man Catherine had not met appeared at her elbow, requesting an introduction and a dance. Ryder stepped back politely, and Catherine found herself dancing with a series of partners, all friendly and respectful. But she was aware the whole time of where Ryder was in the room, and more than once she caught him watching her. As the evening wore on, Catherine felt herself truly beginning to relax. These people accepted her at face value, judging her on her behavior and conversation rather than on rumors they had never heard. She laughed at jokes, sampled delicious food, and allowed herself to imagine that this could be her life, simple and honest and free from the poison of malicious gossip. Near the end of the evening, Ryder appeared at her side again. May I walk you back to Mrs. Henderson's? He asked. It is not far, but it is dark. Thank you, that would be kind, Catherine said, gathering her shawl. They said their goodbyes to the people nearby and stepped out into the cool night air. The stars overhead were brilliant, more than Catherine had ever seen in the city, and the mountains were dark shapes against the sky. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their footsteps echoing on the wooden boardwalk. Finally, Ryder said, You were a success tonight. Everyone was talking about how fortunate we are to have such a qualified teacher. They are very kind, Catherine said. I was nervous about attending, but I am glad I did. Everyone has been so welcoming. That is how Silver Ridge is, Ryder said. We take care of our own. He paused at the gate to Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, then turned to face her directly. Catherine, I want you to know that if anyone ever gives you trouble, if your past somehow follows you here, or if anyone tries to make you feel less than welcome, you come to me. I will stand with you. The fierceness in his voice startled her, and Catherine felt a rush of emotion that was part gratitude and part something deeper, something she was not ready to name. Why? She asked quietly. Why are you being so kind to me? You barely know me. Ryder was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was low and honest. Because I see someone brave enough to start over, strong enough to face down her fears and build a new life. That takes courage. And because when I look at you, I see someone worth knowing, worth protecting. I would like the chance to know you better, Catherine, if you are willing. Catherine's heart was pounding. No man had ever spoken to her with such straightforward honesty. Malcolm's courtship had been all flowery words and empty compliments, designed to flatter and manipulate. Ryder's words were simple and sincere, offering friendship and support without demanding anything in return. I would like that too, she said softly. Very much. Ryder smiled, and even in the darkness she could see the pleasure in his expression. "Good," he said simply. "Sleep well, Catherine. I will see you soon." She watched him walk away, his tall frame gradually swallowed by the night, and felt something shift inside her. For the first time since Malcolm had destroyed her reputation, she felt the stirrings of hope for more than just survival. She felt the possibility of happiness, of connection, of maybe even love. Monday morning arrived with crisp autumn air and bright sunshine. Catherine dressed in her most professional attire, a dark green dress with a white collar, and walked to the schoolhouse with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. This was what she had come for, the chance to prove herself through her work. The children began arriving shortly after she rang the bell, filing in with a combination of eagerness and wariness. They ranged in age from 6-year-old twins with matching pigtails to a lanky 14-year-old boy who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Catherine greeted each one warmly, learning names and assigning seats. She spotted Daniel Brennan immediately, a bright-eyed 10-year-old with his uncle's dark hair and a curious expression. He grinned at her when she introduced herself, and Catherine saw the intelligence Ryder had mentioned. She also noted the students who seemed shy, the ones who looked bored, and the ones who were clearly troublemakers. Every classroom had its dynamics, and she would need to navigate them carefully. "Good morning, students," Catherine said once everyone was seated. "My name is Miss Morrison, and I am your new teacher. I am very pleased to be here in Silver Ridge, and I look forward to getting to know each of you. We are going to have a wonderful year together, learning and growing. But first, I need to understand what you already know, so we will spend today assessing your skills." The day passed quickly as Catherine worked with each student individually, testing their reading, writing, and arithmetic abilities. The skill levels varied wildly, with some children reading fluently and others struggling with basic letters. Catherine made notes, already forming plans for how to structure lessons that would challenge the advanced students while supporting those who needed more help. By the end of the day, she was exhausted but satisfied. The children were generally well-behaved and seemed eager to learn, even the older boys who clearly had responsibilities at home. As the last student left, Catherine sat at her desk and allowed herself a moment of pure satisfaction. She had done it. Her first day as the teacher of Silver Ridge had been a success. A knock on the door made her look up. Ryder stood in the doorway, hat in hand, smiling at her. "How did it go?" he asked. "Wonderfully," Catherine said, unable to keep the joy from her voice. "The children are delightful. Your nephew is very bright, Ryder. He will do well." "Daniel takes after his mother," Ryder said, coming into the room. "Mary always had a quick mind. I am glad he is showing it." He paused, then added, "I was wondering if you might like to have supper with me this evening. Nothing fancy, just the restaurant down the street. I thought you might be too tired to want to cook, and I would enjoy the company." Catherine knew she should probably be cautious. She barely knew this man, despite the connection she felt, but she was tired of being cautious, tired of letting fear dictate her choices. "I would like that," she said. "Thank you for asking." They walked together to the restaurant, a simple establishment with checked tablecloths and the smell of good food. Over roast chicken and vegetables, they talked easily, the conversation flowing naturally. Ryder told her about his ranch, the challenges of building something from scratch, the satisfaction of watching cattle thrive on his land. Catherine told him about teaching, about her love of books and learning, about her hope to make a real difference in her students' lives. "What made you become a teacher?" Ryder asked at one point. Catherine thought about that, remembering the moment she had discovered her calling. "I had a teacher when I was young, Miss Hartwell, who made me believe I could be more than just a pretty addition to some man's household. She taught me that education was power, that knowledge opened doors. I wanted to do that for other girls, show them they had choices. When I taught at the academy in Boston, I loved seeing my students discover their own capabilities." "That must have made losing your position even harder," Ryder said quietly. "It did," Catherine admitted. It felt like everything I had worked for was being taken away because of lies, but now I have this opportunity and I am determined to make the most of it. These children deserve the best education I can give them. They are lucky to have you, Ryder said, and the sincerity in his voice made Catherine's cheeks warm. As they walked back to the boarding house later, Ryder said, "There is a harvest dance in 3 weeks. The whole county comes together to celebrate the end of the season. Would you allow me to escort you?" Catherine's first instinct was to refuse, to protect herself from becoming too attached. But when she looked at Ryder's hopeful expression, she found she did not want to refuse. She wanted to go to the dance with him, wanted to spend more time learning about this man who made her feel safe and valued. "Yes," she said, "I would like that very much." The next few weeks fell into a pleasant rhythm. Catherine threw herself into teaching, finding creative ways to engage her diverse students. She started a reading circle for the older children and implemented a buddy system where advanced students helped those who struggled. The children responded well, and she began to see real progress. She saw Ryder regularly, sometimes by design and sometimes by chance. He would stop by the schoolhouse to check on Daniel, and they would talk for a few minutes. They had supper together twice more, and each time Catherine felt herself growing more comfortable with him, more willing to let down her guard. Ryder never pressed for more than she was willing to give, never made her feel rushed or pressured. He was patient and kind, and Catherine found herself thinking about him more and more. She also grew closer to other people in town. Alice Pritchard became a genuine friend, someone Catherine could talk to about the challenges of teaching and the adjustment to life in a small town. Mrs. Henderson treated her almost like a daughter, offering advice and support. Catherine began to feel truly part of the community, no longer an outsider but a valued member of Silver Ridge. The Saturday of the harvest dance arrived with perfect autumn weather, cool and clear with leaves turning gold and red in the hills. Catherine spent extra time on her appearance, choosing a deep burgundy dress that brought out the color in her cheeks and made her dark hair shine. She pinned her hair in an elaborate style and added the one piece of good jewelry she had brought from Boston, a cameo brooch that had belonged to her grandmother. When Ryder arrived to escort her, his expression made all her efforts worthwhile. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and Catherine felt beautiful under his admiring gaze. The dance was held in a large barn on the Patterson Ranch, decorated with autumn leaves and lit by dozens of lanterns. The whole county seemed to have turned out, and the atmosphere was festive and joyous. Music filled the air, and people laughed and danced with abandon. Ryder claimed Catherine for the first dance, and as they moved together across the floor, Catherine felt something shift between them. This was no longer just friendship or casual interest. This was the beginning of something deeper, something that both thrilled and terrified her. "You are quiet," Ryder observed. "Everything all right?" Catherine looked up at him, at his handsome face and kind eyes, and decided to be honest. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of caring too much, of being hurt again. Malcolm destroyed me, Ryder. I do not know if I can survive that kind of pain a second time." Ryder's arms tightened around her, protective and sure. "I am not Malcolm," he said firmly. "I would never hurt you deliberately, Catherine. I know you have been through hell, and I know trust does not come easy after what happened, but I am asking you to take a chance on me, on us. I promise you, I will spend every day proving I am worthy of that trust." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I want to," she whispered. "I want to believe in this in you." "Then believe," Ryder said softly. "I am falling in love with you, Catherine. I have been since the day you stepped off that stage, looking scared and brave and determined. I want to be the man who stands beside you, who supports your dreams and shares your life. Out here, we write our own stories, remember? Let us write one together." The declaration should have terrified her, but instead Catherine felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had been so afraid to open her heart again, to risk the vulnerability that came with love. But Ryder was offering something Malcolm never had: genuine partnership and respect. He saw her strength and admired it rather than trying to crush it. "I am falling in love with you too," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It scares me how much." Ryder smiled, joy transforming his face. "Then we will be scared together," he said. "But I promise you, Catherine, I will never give you reason to regret this. You are precious to me, and I will guard your heart as carefully as you are trusting me with it." They danced in silence after that, but it was a comfortable silence, full of promise and new beginnings. Catherine rested her head against Ryder's shoulder and let herself imagine a future she had thought was lost forever. A future with love and happiness, and a man who valued her for who she truly was. As the evening wore on, Catherine was introduced to more of the county residents, including several ranching families from the surrounding areas. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, and Catherine felt herself becoming truly woven into the fabric of this community. This was her home now, these were her people, and that realization filled her with contentment. Near the end of the evening, a stranger approached them, a well-dressed man who looked out of place among the ranchers and farmers. "Miss Morrison," he said, his Eastern accent immediately setting Catherine on alert. Catherine Morrison from Boston. Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. This was what she had feared, her past reaching out to destroy the new life she was building. "Yes," she said quietly, her hand tightening on Ryder's arm. "Who are you?" "My name is James Whitmore," the man said. "I am an attorney from Boston. I have been searching for you for some time, Miss Morrison. There is a matter of great importance I need to discuss with you." Ryder stepped slightly in front of Catherine, his posture protective. "If you have business with Miss Morrison, you can conduct it with me present," he said firmly. "Who sent you?" "I was retained by Mrs. Elizabeth Thornton," James Whitmore said, and Catherine gasped. Elizabeth Thornton was Malcolm's mother, a formidable society matron. "She asked me to locate Miss Morrison and deliver a message, along with certain documents." Catherine's mind raced. What could Malcolm's mother possibly want with her to finish the job of destroying her reputation? To ensure she never returned to Boston. "I cannot imagine what Mrs. Thornton would need to tell me," Catherine said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Her son already did enough damage." "That is precisely why she sent me," James Whitmore said. "Mrs. Thornton has learned the truth about what her son did to you, Miss Morrison. She is appalled by his behavior and wants to make amends. She has prepared a full retraction of all the lies Malcolm spread to be published in every major newspaper in Boston. She has also put together a financial settlement as compensation for the harm done to you." Catherine stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "Why?" she finally managed. "Why would she do that?" "Because Malcolm's behavior came to light when he attempted the same thing with another young woman," James Whitmore said grimly. "Her family was more powerful than yours, and they investigated thoroughly. They uncovered the truth about his vicious campaign against you and threatened to expose him publicly. Mrs. Thornton was horrified when she learned what her son had done. She has disowned him and is attempting to undo the damage he caused." Ryder's hand found Catherine's, squeezing supportively. "What exactly are you offering?" he asked, his tone businesslike. James Whitmore pulled an envelope from his jacket. A letter from Mrs. Thornton explaining everything, documents proving that Malcolm fabricated the rumors about Miss Morrison, and a bank draft for $10,000 as recompense for lost wages and damage to her reputation. Mrs. Thornton has also ensured that retractions will be published, clearing Miss Morrison's name completely. $10,000. It was a staggering sum, enough to live on for years, enough to buy security and comfort. Catherine's hands shook as she took the envelope, staring at it as though it might disappear. "My name will be cleared," she asked quietly. "People will know the truth?" "Yes," James Whitmore confirmed. "Mrs. Thornton has been quite thorough. She wants to ensure you suffer no further consequences from her son's reprehensible actions." Catherine looked at Ryder, seeing her own shock reflected in his eyes. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "Take your time to review everything," James Whitmore said kindly. "I am staying at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house for the next few days. If you have questions or wish to discuss the matter further, I am at your disposal." He bowed politely and withdrew, leaving Catherine and Ryder standing alone in the midst of the celebration. "Let us step outside," Ryder said quietly, guiding her out of the barn into the cool night air. Away from the noise and light, Catherine sank onto a bench, the envelope clutched in her hands. Ryder sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, a solid, comforting presence. "I cannot believe this," Catherine said, her voice shaking. "I thought I would carry that shame forever. I thought I would always be the ruined woman, the one Malcolm destroyed. And now—" "Now you are vindicated," Ryder said firmly. "Now everyone back east will know the truth, that you were innocent, and that Malcolm Thornton is the villain he always was." Catherine opened the envelope with trembling hands and pulled out the letter. Even in the dim light from the barn, she could read Mrs. Thornton's elegant script, expressing her horror and shame at her son's actions, begging Catherine's forgiveness, explaining the steps she had taken to clear Catherine's name. The bank draft was there too, made out for the promised $10,000. "This changes everything," Catherine whispered. "I could go back to Boston if I wanted. My reputation will be restored. I could have my old life back." There was a long silence, and when Catherine looked at Ryder, she saw fear in his eyes for the first time. "Is that what you want?" he asked quietly. To go back, Catherine thought about Boston, about the life she had left behind. She thought about the academy where she had taught, the social circles she had moved in, the world of privilege and propriety. Then she thought about Silver Ridge, about her schoolhouse and her students, about Mrs. Henderson and Alice and the community that had welcomed her. Most of all, she thought about Ryder, about the love that was growing between them, about the future they had just begun to imagine together. "No," she said firmly, and the relief on Ryder's face was almost comical. "I do not want to go back. That life was never really mine, Ryder. It was my family's life, their expectations and rules. Here I have something real. I have work that matters, people who value me for who I am, and I have you. This is my home now. This is where I want to stay." Ryder pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Thank God," he said fervently. "I was terrified for a moment that I was going to lose you." "You are not losing me," Catherine said, leaning into his embrace. "But this money, Ryder, it changes my circumstances. I am not dependent on teaching anymore. I have means now." "Does that matter?" Ryder asked. "Only in that it gives me choices," Catherine said thoughtfully. "I want to keep teaching. The children need me and I love the work. But maybe I can also use some of this money to improve the school, buy better books and supplies. Maybe I can even help other people in the community who are struggling." "That is the Catherine I know," Ryder said warmly, "always thinking of others." He paused, then said more seriously, "This also means you do not need to worry about financial security. You could marry for love rather than necessity." Catherine pulled back to look at him, seeing the question in his eyes even if he had not asked it directly. "Yes," she said softly. "I could marry for love, but I would need to be sure the man I married wanted me for who I am, not for my newfound wealth." "I wanted you when you had nothing but the clothes on your back," Ryder said intensely. "I wanted you when all you had was courage and determination. The money does not change how I feel about you, Catherine. If anything, I am glad you have security and choices. You deserve that after everything you have been through." Catherine reached up and cupped his face, feeling the roughness of his jaw under her palm. "I know," she said. "I trust you, Ryder. That is a gift I never thought I would give another man, but you have earned it." Ryder turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm, his eyes never leaving hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it is fast, and I know you need time, but I wanted you to know. I love you, and I want a future with you." "I love you too," Catherine said, the words coming easily now that she had admitted them once. "And I want that future. But you are right, I need time. I need to process all of this, figure out what it means for my life. But I promise you, Ryder, you are part of that future. You are the best thing that has happened to me. They sat together under the stars, holding each other close, and Catherine felt a sense of peace she had not known in a very long time. Her name would be cleared, her reputation would be restored. But more importantly, she had found love and belonging in a place she had come to as a refuge. Silver Ridge was her home now, and Ryder was her future, and that was worth more than any social standing Boston could offer. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Catherine met with James Whitmore several times, signing documents and confirming the details of Mrs. Thornton's settlement. She wrote a careful letter back to Malcolm's mother, accepting the apology and the recompense, but making it clear she had no intention of returning to Boston. Her life was in Montana now, and she was content with that choice. News of Catherine's vindication spread through Silver Ridge, though Catherine had not been the one to share it. Mrs. Henderson had overheard enough to piece together the story, and in a small town, news traveled fast. Instead of pity or changed attitudes, Catherine received only congratulations and support. People were happy for her that the truth had come out, but it did not change how they saw her. She was still their schoolteacher, still the same woman they had welcomed into their community. You see, Ryder said when Catherine expressed her surprise at the lack of drama. I told you, out here we judge by what we see, not by what we hear. You proved yourself by your actions, Catherine. That is what matters to folks here. With her financial security assured, Catherine made plans to improve the school. She ordered new textbooks from a supplier in Chicago, along with maps, globes, and other educational materials. She also quietly helped several families who were struggling, paying for medicine for a sick child here, covering the cost of winter clothes there. She did it discreetly, through Mrs. Henderson or other intermediaries, not wanting anyone to feel like charity cases. As October faded into November, the relationship between Catherine and Ryder deepened. They spent every free moment together, walking in the hills, having meals, simply talking for hours. Ryder introduced her to his sister Mary and her family, and Catherine was welcomed warmly into their circle. Daniel adored his teacher, and his younger siblings looked at Catherine with awe. Ryder talks about you constantly, Mary confided one afternoon when Catherine visited the Brennan Ranch. I have never seen my brother so happy, so settled. You are good for him. He is good for me too, Catherine said honestly. He makes me feel safe and valued. I never thought I would trust a man enough to love him, but Ryder has changed that. Mary smiled knowingly. He will ask you to marry him soon, she said. I can tell he is just waiting for the right moment. The prediction proved accurate. On a clear Sunday in mid-November, Ryder invited Catherine to ride out to his ranch. She had never seen his land, and she was curious about the place he spoke of with such pride. They rode together on horseback, Catherine on a gentle mare that Ryder borrowed from his brother-in-law, and Ryder on his own big gelding. The ranch was about 5 miles north of town, nestled in a valley with a creek running through it. The land rolled gently, already brown with winter approaching but still beautiful. Ryder's cabin was small but well built, with a stone fireplace and windows that let in plenty of light. A barn and corral stood nearby, and Catherine could see cattle grazing in the distance. This is wonderful, Ryder, Catherine said as they dismounted. You have built something really special here. I am proud of it, Ryder admitted, helping her down from her horse, but it is incomplete. There is something missing. What is that? Catherine asked, though her heart was already speeding up, sensing what was coming. Ryder took both her hands in his expression serious and tender. You, he said simply. This ranch needs a woman's touch, needs to be a home instead of just a place to sleep. More than that, I need you, Catherine. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. You are brave and kind and brilliant, and every day with you is a gift. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building a future together. Will you marry me? Catherine felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Ryder, I will marry you. I love you so much. I want to build that future with you." Ryder swept her into his arms, spinning her around with a whoop of joy. When he set her down, he kissed her properly for the first time, his lips warm and sure against hers. Catherine kissed him back, pouring all her love and hope into that moment, sealing the promise they were making to each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning like fools, Ryder pulled a simple gold ring from his pocket. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "My mother gave it to me when I left Texas, said to save it for the woman I truly loved. I want you to have it." Catherine held out her hand and Ryder slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the gold warm against her skin. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "I will treasure it always." They spent the afternoon at the ranch, Ryder showing Catherine every corner of his land and making plans for their future. He talked about expanding the herd, building a bigger house, maybe planting an orchard. Catherine talked about continuing to teach, at least for a few more years, and about making the ranch a place where their future children could grow up happy and loved. "Children," Ryder said, his eyes lighting up. "I want that, Catherine. I want a family with you, sons and daughters to raise and teach and love." "I want that too," Catherine said, imagining it, "though I confess I am a bit nervous about the whole process." Ryder laughed and pulled her close. "We will figure it out together," he promised. "Everything is better when we face it together." They rode back to town as the sun was setting, their horses moving side by side, and Catherine felt a contentment that went bone deep. This was her life now, this man and this land and this community. She had come to Silver Ridge running from shame and gossip, and she had found love and belonging instead. Out here, they really did write their own stories, and hers was turning out better than she ever could have imagined. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Ridge, and the reaction was universally positive. Everyone seemed delighted that their schoolteacher and one of their most respected ranchers had found love. Mrs. Henderson immediately began planning the wedding, insisting it should be a proper celebration. Alice Pritchard offered to make Catherine's wedding dress, and Mary Brennan volunteered to help with the reception. "When do you want to marry?" Ryder asked a few days after the proposal. "I would marry you tomorrow if you would let me, but I know women like to plan these things." Catherine considered. Part of her wanted to wait, to have a long engagement and an elaborate wedding. But that was the old Catherine thinking, the one who cared about Boston society's expectations. The new Catherine, the one who had learned to value substance over show, wanted something different. "Christmas," she said decisively. "I want to marry you at Christmas, Ryder. We can start the new year as husband and wife." "Christmas it is then," Ryder agreed, his smile brilliant. "Though that only gives us about 5 weeks. We do not need much," Catherine said. "Just a church, a minister, our friends and family. Everything else is just decoration." The weeks leading up to Christmas were joyous and hectic. Catherine continued teaching, though the students were distracted by the upcoming holiday and their teacher's obvious happiness. She found herself daydreaming during lessons, thinking about her future with Ryder instead of focusing on arithmetic and spelling. But the children seemed to understand, giggling when they caught her staring off into space with a smile on her face. Alice worked miracles with Catherine's wedding dress, creating a beautiful gown of cream-colored silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. It was elegant but simple, perfect for a winter wedding in a small Montana town. Catherine tried it on a week before the wedding and was moved to tears by how lovely it was. "You look like a princess," Alice said, adjusting the fit. "Ryder is going to forget how to breathe when he sees you." "I just want to look like myself," Catherine said, "but the best version of myself, the woman Ryder sees when he looks at me." "That is exactly what you look like," Alice assured her. Ryder was busy making preparations of his own, working with Tom Brennan and other friends to make the ranch house more suitable for a married couple. They added a bedroom, expanded the kitchen, and built a proper front porch where Catherine could sit and watch the sun set over the mountains. Ryder also surprised Catherine by commissioning a bookshelf, a beautiful piece of furniture with space for all the books she had brought from Boston and more she would collect over the years. The day before the wedding, James Whitmore appeared in Silver Ridge one last time. He sought out Catherine at the schoolhouse after lessons ended, carrying another envelope. "I wanted to deliver this in person before I returned to Boston," he said. "The retractions have been published, Miss Morrison. Your name has been fully cleared. I thought you would want to see the articles." Catherine took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were clippings from several Boston newspapers, all running prominent retractions of the rumors about Catherine Morrison. Some even went further, exposing Malcolm Thornton's pattern of vindictive behavior and applauding Mrs. Thornton for taking decisive action. Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she read, not of sadness but of vindication. The truth was finally out. Anyone who had ever believed the lies about her now knew they had been deceived. "Thank you," she said to James Whitmore. "Thank you for bringing this to me, for helping Mrs. Thornton make this right." "It was my honor," James said. "If I may say so, Miss Morrison, you have found something here that money and social standing could never buy. You have found genuine happiness. Hold on to that." "I intend to," Catherine promised. That night Catherine could not sleep. Tomorrow she would marry Ryder, would pledge herself to him before God and their community. It was everything she wanted, and yet she found herself nervous, not about the marriage itself, but about the intimacy that would follow. She had been raised with vague ideas about marital relations, and her mother's embarrassed explanations before she left Boston had not clarified much. She trusted Ryder completely, but the unknown still made her anxious. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold, with snow falling gently from a gray sky. It was perfect, Catherine thought, watching from her window at the boarding house. A fresh start, clean and pure, covering the old landscape and making everything new. Alice and Mary arrived early to help her prepare, chattering excitedly as they arranged her hair and helped her into the wedding dress. Catherine submitted to their ministrations, feeling oddly calm now that the day had actually arrived. This was right. This was what she was meant to do, who she was meant to be with. The church was decorated simply with evergreen boughs and white candles, filling the air with the scent of pine and wax. It seemed like the entire town had turned out for the wedding, packing the pews and spilling out into the aisles. Catherine stood in the small anteroom with Alice, hearing the murmur of voices and the occasional burst of laughter from the sanctuary. "Ready?" Alice asked, adjusting Catherine's veil one last time. "More ready than I have ever been for anything," Catherine said truthfully. The music started, a simple hymn played on the church's organ by Mrs. Patterson. Alice went first, walking slowly down the aisle as maid of honor. Then it was Catherine's turn. She stepped into the doorway and saw Ryder waiting for her at the altar, flanked by Tom Brennan as his best man. Ryder wore a new suit, his hair neatly combed, and the expression on his face when he saw her took her breath away. He looked at her as though she were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, as though he could not believe his good fortune. Catherine walked down the aisle alone, having no father or family member to give her away. But she did not feel alone. She felt supported by the whole community, by all these people who had welcomed her and made her one of their own. And she felt drawn forward by Ryder's presence, by the promise of their future together. When she reached the altar, Ryder took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "You are so beautiful," he whispered, and Catherine smiled, feeling beautiful under his loving gaze. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Reverend Thompson spoke about love and commitment, about the sacred bond of marriage and the blessings of partnership. Catherine and Ryder repeated their vows, their voices clear and certain, promising to love and honor each other for all their days. When Ryder slipped a gold band onto Catherine's finger to join her engagement ring, she felt the rightness of it settling into her bones. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thompson declared. "Ryder, you may kiss your bride." Ryder cupped Catherine's face gently and kissed her, sweet and tender and full of promise. The church erupted in applause and cheers, and Catherine laughed against Ryder's lips, joy bubbling up inside her. They were married. She was Ryder Callahan now, wife of the man she loved, member of this community, no longer defined by the gossip and lies of her past. The reception was held in the town hall, with food contributed by everyone in town and music provided by a group of enthusiastic if slightly off-key musicians. Catherine and Ryder danced their first dance as husband and wife, swaying together to a waltz while everyone watched with indulgent smiles. Then others joined them, and the celebration became a joyous chaos of dancing and laughter and toasts to the newlyweds. "Happy?" Ryder asked during a quiet moment, his arm around Catherine's waist as they watched their guests enjoy themselves. "Happier than I knew it was possible to be," Catherine said honestly. "Thank you, Ryder. Thank you for seeing past the scared woman who arrived on that stagecoach, for believing in who I could be." "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy," Ryder countered. "For choosing this life, choosing me when you could have gone back to Boston and reclaimed your old life." "This is the life I want," Catherine said firmly. "You are who I want, always." As the evening wore on, Catherine found herself growing nervous again about what would come after. Finally, as the party began to wind down, Mary squeezed her hand and said, "Time to go home, I think. Ryder looks like he is about to carry you off whether you are ready or not." Catherine laughed but felt her cheeks heat. "I am nervous," she admitted quietly. Mary's expression softened. "That is natural, but Ryder loves you, Catherine. He will be gentle and patient. Trust him like you have been trusting him all along." The advice helped, and when Ryder came to collect her, Catherine went willingly. They said their goodbyes, endured the good-natured teasing and advice shouted by well-meaning friends, and finally escaped to Ryder's horse. He had hitched up a small wagon for the occasion, with blankets to keep them warm on the ride to the ranch. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead and snow crunching under the wagon wheels. Ryder kept one arm around Catherine, keeping her close as they rode. They did not talk much, but the silence was comfortable, anticipatory rather than awkward. The ranch house looked welcoming with lamplight glowing in the windows. Ryder had clearly been there earlier to prepare, and when they went inside, Catherine saw that he had lit a fire in the fireplace and left more lamps burning to chase away the darkness. The main room felt cozy and intimate, and Catherine noticed all the little touches that made it a home: the quilt on the chair that Mary had made, the bookshelf Ryder had commissioned, a photograph of his family on the mantel. "Welcome home, Mrs. Callahan," Ryder said, and the name sent a thrill through Catherine. She was Mrs. Callahan now, truly and legally bound to this man. "It is a wonderful home," Catherine said, turning to face him. "Our home." Ryder moved closer, his hands coming to rest gently on her waist. "Are you nervous?" He asked quietly. "A little," Catherine admitted. "I do not know exactly what to expect, and I am afraid of doing something wrong." "You could not do anything wrong," Ryder said firmly. "This is about us learning each other, Catherine. There is no right or wrong, just what feels good and what shows our love. And if you want to wait, if you are not ready tonight, that is fine too. I can be patient." Catherine thought about that, about the kindness of the offer, but she did not want to wait. She wanted to complete this union, to be Ryder's wife in every sense. "I do not want to wait," she said, reaching up to touch his face. "I want to be your wife fully, Ryder. I trust you." Ryder's eyes darkened with desire and tenderness. He kissed her then, deeper than he had before, and Catherine responded eagerly. His hands were careful as they began to help her out of her wedding dress, each button and hook undone slowly, giving her time to adjust. Catherine returned the favor, fumbling slightly with his clothing but learning as she went. When they finally came together in the bed in the small room Ryder had prepared, Catherine felt a moment of nervousness that was quickly soothed by Ryder's gentleness. He took his time, making sure she was comfortable, whispering words of love and encouragement. There was some pain, but it was brief, and then there was closeness and intimacy beyond anything Catherine had imagined. She felt truly joined to Ryder, not just legally but physically and emotionally, two people becoming one in the most fundamental way. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the quilts, Ryder's arms around her and Catherine's head on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat steady and strong and felt utterly safe and loved. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Ryder replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Forever, Catherine, you are mine and I am yours forever." Catherine fell asleep with a smile on her face, knowing she had finally found where she belonged. The winter passed in a haze of contentment. Catherine continued teaching, though she now rode to school from the ranch each morning and returned in the evening. The children adjusted quickly to calling her Mrs. Callahan, and Catherine found she loved the reminder of her married status. She was part of a family now, connected to Ryder and through him to his sister's family and the wider community. Life on the ranch was different from anything Catherine had known. She learned to cook on the wood stove, to keep the house warm and comfortable, to manage the 100 small tasks that kept a household running. Ryder was patient with her learning curve, never making her feel inadequate when she burned dinner or forgot to check the stove. They worked together as partners, Ryder handling the ranch work and Catherine managing the house and continuing her teaching. In February, Catherine realized she was with child. The signs were unmistakable, the missed courses and morning sickness, the fatigue that made getting out of bed a challenge some days. She told Ryder one evening after supper, nervous about his reaction even though she knew he wanted children. Ryder's face lit up with pure joy. "A baby," he said, his voice awed. "We are going to have a baby in late summer, I think," Catherine confirmed. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," Ryder said, sweeping her into a careful embrace. "This is everything I wanted, Catherine. A wife I love, a child on the way, a life we built together. Thank you for giving me this." Catherine cried happy tears against his shoulder, overwhelmed by the fullness of her life. A year ago, she had been ruined and desperate, fleeing from shame and gossip. Now she was married to a good man, expecting his child and surrounded by a community that valued her. The transformation was almost too much to believe. She continued teaching through the spring, though as her pregnancy advanced, she began to tire more easily. In May, she reluctantly told Mayor Webb that she would need to take a leave after the school term ended in June. He understood completely and assured her the position would be waiting whenever she was ready to return. The school term ended with a small celebration, the children presenting Catherine with drawings and handmade gifts. Daniel Brennan gave her a carved wooden apple, a traditional teacher's gift, and Catherine was moved to tears by the thoughtfulness. She had made a difference in these children's lives, and they had made a difference in hers. Summer was hot and uncomfortable as Catherine's belly grew large. She stayed close to the ranch, helping where she could but mostly preparing for the baby's arrival. Mary taught her what to expect and how to care for a newborn, and Alice provided practical advice about setting up a nursery. Ryder converted the small storage room into a nursery, building a cradle with his own hands and painting the walls a cheerful yellow. In late August, Catherine went into labor on a hot afternoon. Mary and Mrs. Henderson were with her, guiding her through the process while Ryder paced anxiously outside. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Catherine was sure she could not endure another contraction. But finally, as the sun was setting, she gave a final push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby crying lustily. "It is a boy," Mary announced, cleaning the infant and wrapping him in a soft blanket. "A healthy, strong boy." Ryder was allowed in then, and Catherine watched through exhausted eyes as he approached the bed, wonder written all over his face. Mary placed the baby in his arms, and Ryder looked down at his son with an expression of such love that Catherine felt tears stream down her face. "He is perfect," Ryder said hoarsely. "Catherine, he is absolutely perfect." "Let me see him," Catherine said, and Ryder carefully transferred the baby to her arms. She looked down at the tiny face, seeing features that were a blend of her and Ryder, and felt her heart expand with love she had not known she was capable of. This was her son, hers and Ryder's, a new life they had created together. "What should we name him?" Ryder asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and putting his arm around Catherine. Catherine had thought about this during the long months of pregnancy. "Samuel," she said. "After your father, Samuel Callahan." "Samuel," Ryder repeated, trying it out. "I like that. My father would be honored." He kissed Catherine's forehead. "You did so well. You are amazing, you know that?" "I had help," Catherine said, smiling at Mary and Mrs. Henderson, who were cleaning up and preparing to leave the new family alone. "Thank you, both of you. I could not have done this without you." "That is what family is for," Mary said warmly. "You rest now, Catherine. You have earned it." After they left, Catherine, Ryder, and baby Samuel were alone for the first time. Catherine nursed the baby with Mary's earlier instructions in mind, marveling at how natural it felt despite her inexperience. Ryder stayed close, watching them both with such obvious adoration that Catherine felt overwhelmed by her good fortune. "I love you," she said, looking up at her husband. "Thank you for this life, for our son, for everything." "I love you too," Ryder said. "Both of you, my family." The first months with Samuel were exhausting but wonderful. Catherine learned the rhythms of infant care, the cycle of feeding and changing and soothing. Ryder helped whenever he could, walking the floor with Samuel during fussy nights and changing diapers without complaint. They were partners in parenting just as they were partners in everything else. Catherine did not return to teaching that fall, wanting to focus on Samuel. But she missed her students, and by the following spring, when Samuel was old enough to be left with Mary or Mrs. Henderson for a few hours, she approached Mayor Webb about teaching part-time. They worked out an arrangement where Catherine would teach in the mornings only, allowing her to be home with Samuel in the afternoons. It was the perfect balance, allowing Catherine to continue the work she loved while also being present for her son. Samuel thrived, growing into a happy, curious toddler who loved following his father around the ranch and listening to his mother read stories. 2 years after Samuel's birth, Catherine became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1880, she delivered a daughter they named Grace Elizabeth. Grace was a quieter baby than Samuel had been, content to watch the world with solemn dark eyes that reminded Catherine of her own. 2 children, Ryder marveled, holding Grace while Samuel climbed on his lap, demanding attention. "Our family is growing." "Is it too much?" Catherine asked, watching him juggle both children. "Never," Ryder said firmly. "This is everything I dreamed of and more. I love our life, Catherine. I love what we have built together." Catherine looked around their home, at the toys scattered on the floor and the children's drawings on the walls, at the bookshelf full of books, and the photographs documenting their growing family, and felt complete. This was her life now, messy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. She was a wife, a mother, a teacher, a valued member of her community. She had written her own story, just as Ryder had promised she could, and it was better than anything she could have imagined back in Boston. The years passed in a blur of joy and challenges. The ranch prospered under Ryder's careful management, and he was able to expand his land and his herd. Catherine continued teaching part-time, becoming a fixture in the community and influencing a generation of children. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved helping his father with the cattle. Grace was quieter but equally determined, inheriting her mother's love of learning and her father's practical skills. In 1883, Catherine gave birth to twin boys, James and William, who kept the entire household on their toes with their boundless energy and mischief. Ryder hired a hand to help with the ranch work, acknowledging he could not do everything himself with 4 children demanding attention. Catherine stepped back from teaching entirely for a year, overwhelmed by the demands of twin infants, but she returned the following year, unable to stay away from the schoolhouse for long. Through it all, Catherine and Ryder's love deepened and matured. They had their disagreements and frustrations, the inevitable conflicts of two strong-willed people building a life together. But they always came back to the foundation of respect and affection that had brought them together. Ryder never failed to support Catherine's ambitions and interests, and Catherine always honored Ryder's need to provide and protect his family. In 1886, Catherine received a letter from Boston that both surprised and vindicated her. It was from the headmistress of a prestigious girls' academy, not the one Catherine had taught at but a rival institution. The headmistress had read the retractions published years ago and wanted to offer Catherine a position if she ever considered returning east. The salary offered was substantial and the opportunity was significant. Catherine showed the letter to Ryder that evening, curious about his reaction. He read it carefully, then looked at her with serious eyes. "Is this something you want?" he asked. "To go back to Boston to teach at this level again?" Catherine thought about it honestly. Part of her, the part that still remembered her early ambitions, was tempted by the prestige and opportunity. But it was a small part, easily overruled by her love for her life in Montana. "No," she said firmly. "My life is here, Ryder. Our children are here, our home is here. I do not want to leave any of it. I will write and decline the offer." "Are you sure?" Ryder pressed. "I do not want you to have regrets, Catherine. If this is important to you, we could consider it." "I am absolutely certain," Catherine said, taking his hands. "You told me once that out here we write our own stories. I wrote mine, and it is a good story, Ryder. It is the story of a woman who found courage, love, and purpose in a place she came to as a refuge. I do not want a different story." Ryder pulled her close, kissing her soundly. "I love you," he said. "Thank you for choosing this life, choosing us." "Always," Catherine promised. She wrote to the headmistress that evening, politely declining the offer and explaining that her life was in Montana with her husband and children. She did not mention that she still taught part-time at a one-room schoolhouse, knowing the headmistress would probably find it beneath Catherine's abilities. But Catherine did not find it beneath her. She found it fulfilling and important, shaping young minds and helping children discover their potential. The scandal that had driven her from Boston seemed like a lifetime ago, something that had happened to a different person. Catherine rarely thought about Malcolm Thornton anymore, except occasionally to marvel at how his cruelty had inadvertently given her the life she was meant to have. If he had not destroyed her reputation, she would never have come to Silver Ridge, never have met Ryder, never have built this beautiful life. In 1888, when Catherine was 36 and Ryder was 42, they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. The community threw them a party, a testament to how beloved they were in Silver Ridge. Catherine stood with Ryder, surrounded by their 4 children and their many friends, and reflected on the journey that had brought her here. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked quietly, his arm around her waist. "That I am grateful," Catherine said honestly. "Grateful for that day I stepped off the stagecoach and you were the first person I met. Grateful that you saw past my fear and offered me friendship. Grateful for every day of the last 10 years. "I am the grateful one," Ryder countered. "You gave me a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. You made this ranch a home. You made me a better man." Catherine turned to look at him, seeing the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair, the lines experience had carved into his face. He was still the most handsome man she had ever known, but more than that, he was the best man she had ever known. "We made each other better," she said. "That is what love does." Later that night, after the party ended and the children were asleep, Catherine and Ryder sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching stars blaze overhead. The mountains rose dark against the sky, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. Catherine leaned against Ryder's shoulder, content and at peace. "Do you remember what you said to me that first week I was here?" Catherine asked. "About writing our own stories." "I remember," Ryder said. "I meant every word." "You were right," Catherine said. My reputation was ruined by gossip back east, but you said out here we write our own story. We did, Ryder. We wrote a love story, a family story, a story about second chances and new beginnings. It is a good story. It is the best story, Ryder agreed. He kissed the top of her head, his arms tightening around her. And it is not over yet. We have a lot more chapters to write together. Catherine smiled in the darkness, knowing he was right. There would be more challenges ahead, more joys and sorrows, more moments of ordinary happiness and extraordinary love. Their children would grow and have stories of their own. The ranch would continue to prosper. The school would keep shaping young minds. And through it all, she and Ryder would face everything together, partners and lovers and best friends. As if summoning her thoughts into reality, the door behind them opened and Samuel appeared, now a gangly 12-year-old who was almost as tall as his mother. "Pa, one of the mares is having trouble," he said urgently. "I think she is foaling early." Ryder was on his feet immediately, his rancher instincts taking over. "Show me," he said, then turned to Catherine. "I will be back soon." "I will wait up," Catherine promised, watching him stride off toward the barn with Samuel. She sat alone on the porch for a while longer, thinking about the life she had built here. She thought about the woman she had been when she arrived in Silver Ridge, frightened and ashamed and certain her life was over. She thought about the woman she was now, confident and loved and surrounded by family and community. The transformation had not been easy or quick. It had taken courage to trust again, to open her heart after Malcolm's betrayal. It had taken faith to believe in Ryder's promises and her own worth. But she had done it, and the reward was a life richer and more fulfilling than anything she had known in Boston. An hour later, Ryder returned with Samuel, both of them grinning. "Healthy foal," Ryder reported, "a filly. Samuel helped with the delivery, did a fine job." Samuel's chest puffed with pride at his father's praise, and Catherine smiled at both of them. "Well done," she said. "I am proud of you, Samuel." After Samuel went to bed, Catherine and Ryder finally retired themselves. In the privacy of their bedroom, Ryder pulled Catherine into his arms, and they came together with the ease of long familiarity and enduring passion. Their love had only deepened over the years, becoming something solid and unshakable. "I love you," Catherine whispered as they lay tangled together afterward. "I will love you until my dying day and beyond," Ryder Callahan. "And I will love you just as long," Ryder promised. "You are my heart, Catherine. You always will be." The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and joys. Samuel grew into a fine young man who took over more of the ranch work, giving Ryder time to slow down and enjoy life. Grace developed into a brilliant student who dreamed of becoming a teacher like her mother. The twins, James and William, were inseparable and constantly finding new ways to get into mischief. In 1892, Catherine finally retired from teaching entirely, deciding at 40 to focus on her family and other pursuits. The community honored her with a ceremony recognizing her 15 years of service, and Catherine was moved by the testimonials from former students and their parents. She had made a difference, had helped shape the lives of dozens of children. That legacy meant more to her than any accolade she might have earned in Boston. That same year, Samuel married a local girl named Emily, and Catherine and Ryder became in-laws. The wedding was joyful, and watching her son pledge himself to his bride reminded Catherine of her own wedding day, of the leap of faith she had taken in trusting Ryder with her heart. Grace left for college in 1895, heading to a teacher's college in Denver to pursue her dreams. Catherine missed her daughter terribly, but was proud of her courage and ambition. The twins were 14 that year, growing into strong young men who would soon be ready to make their own way in the world. Through it all, the constant was Catherine and Ryder's love for each other. They were partners in every sense, facing life's challenges together and celebrating its joys. The ranch continued to prosper, becoming one of the most successful operations in the county. Catherine involved herself in community projects, helping to establish a lending library and supporting efforts to bring better medical care to the region. In 1896, Samuel and Emily presented Catherine and Ryder with their first grandchild, a boy they named Ryder after his grandfather. Catherine held the infant and felt the circle of life completing, from the frightened woman who had fled Boston to the grandmother cradling her son's child. It was almost more than her heart could hold. "Look what we built," she said to Ryder that evening, watching their grandson sleep. "From nothing but hope and courage we built all of this." "You built it," Ryder corrected gently. "You had the courage to start over, to trust in love again. I just had the good fortune to be the man you chose." "We built it together," Catherine insisted. "That is how it has always been with us." As the 19th century drew to a close, Catherine found herself reflecting on the strange and wonderful path her life had taken. If someone had told her on that day in 1876, when she stepped off the stagecoach in Silver Ridge, that she would find love, family, purpose, and happiness, she would never have believed them. She had been so broken, so certain her life was effectively over, but Ryder had been right. Out here in the wild spaces of Montana Territory, later Montana the state, they wrote their own stories. They decided who they were and what their lives meant. The gossip and lies that had driven her from Boston held no power here, could not touch the life she had built through her own efforts and the love of a good man. In 1900, on the first day of the new century, Catherine and Ryder stood together on their porch, watching the sun rise over the mountains. They were both in their late 40s now, with silver in their hair and lines on their faces earned through years of laughter and hard work. Their children were grown, or nearly so, building their own lives and stories. The ranch was thriving, a legacy they could be proud of. "Any regrets?" Ryder asked, as if reading her thoughts. Catherine considered the question seriously, as it deserved. She thought about the life she might have had if Malcolm had not destroyed her reputation, the society parties and comfortable privilege of Boston's upper class. She thought about the prestigious teaching positions she had been offered over the years and declined. She thought about all the paths not taken. "Not a single one," she said finally, truthfully. "This is the life I was meant to have, Ryder. Every joy, every challenge, every moment has been exactly what I needed. I would not change anything." "Not even the gossip that drove you here?" Ryder asked. Catherine smiled, understanding the deeper question. "Especially not that," she said, "because it brought me to you, to this place, to this life. Malcolm Thornton thought he was destroying me when he spread those lies. Instead, he freed me to find something real and true. I should probably thank him, except I never want to think about him again." Ryder laughed and pulled her close. "Fair enough," he said. "Here is to the new century and to writing more chapters of our story." "To our story," Catherine agreed, tilting her face up for his kiss. "The story of a woman whose reputation was ruined by gossip back east, and the cowboy who told her out here we write our own story. It is a good story, Ryder, the very best story." And it was. As the years continued to unfold, Catherine and Ryder faced them together with Grace and love. Grace returned from college and opened her own school in a neighboring town, becoming a respected educator in her own right. The twins both became ranchers, purchasing land adjacent to their father's and expanding the family operation. Samuel and Emily had 3 more children, filling the ranch with the laughter of grandchildren. Catherine wrote letters to old friends occasionally, maintaining connections to her past while firmly rooted in her present. The women who had shunned her in Boston were long forgotten, their opinions rendered meaningless by time and distance. Mrs. Thornton wrote once a year, usually at Christmas, maintaining the connection and continuing to express her remorse for her son's actions. Malcolm himself had died in a riding accident in 1898, and Catherine had felt nothing but pity for the wasted life he had led. In 1906, Silver Ridge celebrated its 30th anniversary as an incorporated town, and Catherine and Ryder were honored as pioneers who had helped build the community. Catherine gave a speech at the celebration, talking about the importance of education and community support. She looked out at the crowd and saw former students now grown with children of their own, saw families she had known for decades, saw the town that had become her home in every sense of the word. "I came to Silver Ridge 30 years ago as a stranger," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the hall. "I was running from gossip and lies, from a past that had been destroyed by someone else's cruelty, but this town gave me something precious. It gave me the chance to start over, to be judged by my actions rather than by rumors. It gave me community and purpose. Most importantly, it gave me love." She looked at Ryder, standing at the edge of the crowd, and saw him wipe his eyes. "My husband told me when we first met that out here we write our own stories. He was right. I wrote a story here with him and with all of you. It has been a good story, and I am grateful for every page." The applause was thunderous, and Catherine saw tears on many faces. She had spoken a truth that resonated with many in the audience, because so many of them had come west seeking fresh starts and new beginnings. They understood what it meant to leave the past behind and build something new in this wild, beautiful country. As Catherine grew older, she spent more time on reflection and less on physical work. She wrote her memoirs, not for publication but for her children and grandchildren, wanting them to understand where she had come from and how she had become the woman they knew. She wrote honestly about Malcolm's betrayal and the scandal that had driven her west. She wrote about the fear and determination that had brought her to Silver Ridge. And she wrote about finding Ryder, about the slow building of trust and love, about creating a life that honored her true self rather than society's expectations. Ryder read the memoirs one winter evening, sitting by the fire while Catherine dozed in her chair. When she woke, she found him watching her with tears streaming down his weathered face. "This is beautiful, Catherine," he said hoarsely. "You captured it all, every moment. Our children and grandchildren will treasure this." "I wanted them to know the truth," Catherine said. "That good things can come from terrible circumstances if you have courage and find the right partner. That love is worth the risk. That a ruined reputation in one place can become irrelevant when you find where you truly belong." Ryder crossed to her chair and knelt beside it, taking her hands in his. "You are the bravest person I have ever known," he said, "and I am honored every single day that you chose this life. And I am honored that you saw me when I felt invisible," Catherine replied, touching his face with gentle fingers. "That you offered me friendship and then love without conditions or judgment. You saved me, Ryder, in every way a person can be saved." They sat together in the firelight, two people who had built a life from courage and love, and Catherine felt complete. She was 68 years old, grandmother to 8 and counting, matriarch of a family that stretched across the county. She had lived a full, rich life, had loved deeply and been loved in return. What more could anyone ask in 1918, during the terrible flu epidemic that swept the country? Catherine fell ill. Ryder nursed her through the worst of it, refusing to leave her side despite the danger to himself. All their children returned home, gathering to support their parents through the crisis. Catherine fought hard, determined not to leave Ryder, but she was old now and her strength was limited. One evening, as she lay in bed with Ryder holding her hand, Catherine looked at the faces of her children gathered around. "I want you to know," she said, her voice weak but clear, "that I have had a wonderful life, better than I ever dreamed possible. You children have been my greatest joy, and your father has been my heart. Do not mourn me. Celebrate that I lived fully and loved completely." "Ma, do not talk like that," Samuel said, his voice breaking. "You are going to get better." But Catherine knew she was not. She could feel her body failing, her strength ebbing. She was not afraid, just sad to leave the people she loved. "Take care of your father," she instructed, "and take care of each other. Remember what you came from, what we built here. Pass that on to your own children." That night, with Ryder beside her and her family surrounding her, Ryder Callahan peacefully passed away. She was 76 years old, and she died knowing she was loved and had made a difference in the world, Ryder was devastated by her loss. For 42 years, Catherine had been his partner, his love, his best friend. The ranch house felt empty without her laughter and wisdom, but he found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the legacy they had built together. He lived another 8 years, long enough to see 2 more great-grandchildren born, and to know that the family he and Catherine had started would continue for generations. When Ryder died in 1926 at the age of 80, he was buried beside Catherine in the Silver Ridge Cemetery, their graves marked with a simple headstone that read, Catherine and Ryder Callahan. They wrote their own story, beloved parents and grandparents. It was a fitting epitaph for 2 people who had taken control of their destinies and built something beautiful from courage and love. Their descendants continued to thrive in Montana, ranchers and teachers and business people who carried forward the values Catherine and Ryder had instilled. The old ranch house remained in the family, preserved as a reminder of where it all began. Catherine's memoirs were published decades later by a great-granddaughter who had become a historian, and they became a valuable document of frontier life and the experience of women building new lives in the West. The story of Catherine Morrison, who fled Boston in disgrace and became Ryder Callahan, beloved wife, mother, teacher, and community leader, became part of Silver Ridge's history. Children learned about her in school, hearing how she had brought education to their town and helped build the foundation of their community. The small lending library she had founded grew into a proper public library, named in her honor. And sometimes, on clear autumn nights when the stars blazed overhead and the mountains stood dark against the sky, people in Silver Ridge would remember the story of the cowboy and the schoolteacher, how Ryder Callahan had told Catherine Morrison that out here, they wrote their own stories. It was a reminder that the past did not have to define the future, that courage and love could overcome any obstacle, and that sometimes the worst thing that happens to us leads to the best thing that ever happened to us. Catherine had arrived in Silver Ridge in 1876 as a broken woman fleeing scandal. She had died in 1918 as a beloved pillar of the community, surrounded by the family she had created and the love she had nurtured. In between, she had lived fully and courageously, proving that her ruined reputation back east meant nothing when you found your true home and wrote your own story out west. It was a story of redemption and love, of second chances and new beginnings, and it ended exactly as it should have, with happiness and fulfillment and a legacy that would endure for generations.